Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of All in All with Alex. I'm your host, of course, Alex. Today we have a very special guest, Miss Pauline. How you doing today?
I'm good. Hello, everybody.
Good, good. So, can you give them a brief background about yourself, and then we'll get into the questions?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Pauline Dougald. I'm the peak performance and creativity coach. I have begun my life as an artist. I spent a lot of years in fine arts, dance, and etc. And then I spent a lot of years in analytical professions. And then, as a way to integrate both of my sides, the creativity and analytical, I have created Art Diversion, which is my attempt to share everything that I've learned and inspire the world to be creative in their own way in order for them to reach their own peak performance level.
Hmm, perfect. Um, so what inspired your unique approach to coaching?
My unique approach to coaching comes from my background. Because I started as an artist, because I began with an intention to be a designer and occupy this niche within the creative community, my coaching has roots in that aspect. And so that is what I bring to the table. I bring creativity, and I also bring all the tools associated with unlocking the creativity and encouraging and promoting that, which then leads to better productivity, better performance, and overall better well-being.
Hmm, perfect. So with your background in fine arts, interior design, neuroscience, and peak performance coaching, how do you blend all these diverse areas in of expertise? How do you blend them in together?
Well, that is an amazing question because what I looked at in my background and all the tools that I had. So I started in interior design, then I went into project management, and so I looked at details of construction, in details of building spaces, and so I focused on the physicality of interior spaces, and then I got the tools to focus on the interior spaces within the mind. So that is how I've integrated. I've been learning from the best the tools and strategy of how to time manage, or how to resolve the burnout, how to perform better, be more integrated in different aspects, in the aspects that relate to neuroscience, how we learn, how our brain gets adjusted, the aspects that relate to time management, all those things, and then as well as flow state science, which tells us that there are specific aspects that we need to get to in order to reach that state of being in the zone. So I took those and I connected them with my already predisposition towards working with spaces. And that is what caused my unique approach and resulted in this unique way in which I deal with clients, where I bring all the left brain analytical and logical strategies and frameworks, but then we mix it with creativity. How to look at something from a different perspective, how to reframe something so it is much better and less restrictive.
Okay, okay. So the paintings behind you are did you do those?
I did. That's my art.
Okay, those are amazing. I like them. I like them.
Thank you.
I actually ride motorcycles myself, so I definitely like those as well. So
Oh, what do you write?
actually, I have a Yamaha FZ6R, so it's kind of like a mixture between a street bike and a mixture between a street bike and a cruiser. So I don't have to crouch all the way down like the crotch rockets. I can actually sit up and relax and not have my back hurting. So,
Did you say YZF 600?
uh, it's it's FZ6R. It's a
Oh,
Yamaha yeah
well,
FZ6R.
Yamaha was my first bike.
Okay,
2007, when I got into when we got into riding, Yamaha YZF 600, the Thundercat, was my very first bike. So
okay, okay. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. So what is so you just gotta love a bike, huh?
I do love bikes. I love motorsports. That was another aspect of my passion, because that's why I paint the bikes and race cars as well. If you go into my website, there are other paintings of race cars that I did because I spend a lot of time at the racetrack working with a racing series. So that's been another passion of mine.
Okay, so what is the meaning behind the fox painting? Is that fox?
Yes, it is the fox. It's a little bit there.
Okay.
The fox represents the archetype of the magician. So for me, my creativity is directly linked to the archetype of the magician. And magician is somebody who goes into the spaces, mystical spaces, the unknown, the dark kind of the foxholes, and gathers magic and brings it forth. So I draw inspiration from the archetype of the magician because that is directly connected to my creativity and how I extract the tools and transform them, and how I work with clients as well by transforming their perspective through the process of just maneuvering and changing.
Okay. 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 Um, so, what role would you say that artistic expression plays in your coaching methodology?
Well, so artistic expression plays huge role in everybody's life. Artistic expression or creative expression is our authentic expression. We as people all have certain level of creativity. We all have some form of artistic talent. It might not be painting, might not be something very standardized like music, poetry, and painting, but it could be cooking, it could be gardening, it could be landscaping. Any form of working with the physical reality in order to create something new is the artistic expression. So everybody has that. And so I strive to get to the root of which type of creativity, which type of authentic expression is present in my client or the person I'm working with, so that they can connect to it fully and then express it authentically and completely. Because expression of creative power is like a life force. We all have this life force, which is creativity. So when we allow it to come out fully and completely, then it colors our entire world, and it can make us much more fulfilled and satisfied in our daily living.
Mm, I would agree with that. So, how does okay? So, how does your understanding of neuroscience inform your approach to coaching and optimizing self performance?
Well, I love that question because I have been studying neuroscience for quite some time. And the whole point about it is that knowing that our brains are have a certain amount of plasticity within them. It means that we make connections within the brains, and then we make patterns within our internal kind of brain structure. And one of the things that I find fascinating is that our brains have no idea what is outside and what we imagine. So something that our eyes are perceiving and we are seeing in our exterior world enters into our brain as information. But if we close our eyes and we imagine, the brain will have no different, it will have no ability to distinguish what we're perceiving in outer reality and what we're imagining. So that opens a whole array of possibilities of how to shift our reality and how to adjust those patterns within the brain, those neural connections that we reinforce through our behavior. So the coaching that I do is focused on shifting behavior slightly and encouraging people to visualize more so that they can change and shift those patterns to something that is more conducive to their creativity, more conducive for better behaviors, and more allowing for expression of their fullness. So, by understanding that you can change the way that you have been doing things, the way that you perceive them, the way that you reframe things, can allow people gain hope that they can shift to another level of thinking, along another level of performance. And so that comes as a tool, understanding of neuroscience and how connections make, how we learn. That is another thing. It is so important in this day and age to learn better because the technology is evolving at a rapid pace. So we have to understand how to learn better. And that sometimes that can vary between individual, depending on their preferred method of learning. It could be audio, it could be visual, it could be tactile, it could be kinesthetic. That relates to how their patterns are set in the brain. So, in order to learn something new, they need to understand what is their preferred method of learning, how to set up the conditions for optimized learning, and then know that it is possible. It's like that old saying, the old dog can't learn new tricks. Well, with neuroscience, we can totally change that and know that old dog can actually, in fact, learn new tricks. And that opens up a whole array of possibilities.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So, what do you? So, what have you seen are some common challenges or roadblocks that your clients face when it comes to them trying to get into their creativity or achieving their peak performance?
Yeah, there are very the few standard blocks that are present, and actually wrote a mini book about them. I selected all the main blocks to creativity, and you can find it on my website. It's called Maps to Creative Blocks. And number one block is overthinking. Because when you are overthinking and you're sitting in your logical brain and you swirling that information that is the same and you're in that loop cycle, that can keep you stuck in stress. I refer to that as being stuck in the faster brain waves type. So we have different brain waves through which we fluctuate throughout the day: alpha, beta, theta, delta, etc. And so the day that we spend in conscious living is spent mostly in the beta brain waves. And when we think and overthink, we stay there longer and we shift to stressed version of that expression. So it is good to understand that in order to unlock creativity and in order to overcome that common block, it's good to sit back, close your eyes, visualize something better, engage with that active visualization, which can allow brain to shift through different forms of perception. And that lowers the brain waves and that unlocks more potential and more creativity. So things like that. And another common block is lack of sleep and exhaustion. If somebody is going straight and driving themselves hard and trying to accomplish something, physical health matters a lot. So proper nutrition, time in nature, proper sleep, things like that, they are essential for peak performance, for creativity, for optimized living. It is just basic, but it's often neglected and put on the back burner because people think, well, I just need to go straight forward and accomplish more and work harder and I'll catch up with sleep later. But that is actually a mistake.
Yeah, and I know I'm a victim of that because I used to do it all the time. I'm like, oh, I need to do this. Okay, I'm all right. I'm okay with just getting 4 hours of sleep tonight, or 3 hours tomorrow, or 4 hours the next day. And you do that for so many days in a row, and you look back, you're like, hey, I ain't had an 8 hour worth of sleep night in 10 days. Oh man, you know what I mean? So when you have that goal set in mind that you want to achieve, sometimes you don't really let nothing stop you, and that's not necessarily the best way either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that because we are so focused on achieving certain goals, we oftentimes sacrifice health. And at the end, there have been a lot of people out there who have gained a lot of momentum. They earned a lot of money. They're sitting on a whole pile of cash, but their health is damaged and their relationships are terrible. So what's the point of all of that if the most important things are not working anymore?
Right, right. No, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. Um, so can you share maybe like a success story or a transformation that you witnessed um, in a client through your holistic coaching approach?
Yes, I actually worked with one client who was overcoming long COVID symptoms. He came out of well, we all dealt with this pandemic and lockdowns and all of that, and his mental health was suffering because he was isolated, he was working too hard, and he wasn't taking care of his health to the extent that he should have been. So after working with him, we set out structures and system in order for him to get back to his rhythms, but also incorporate new things in creative ways so that he can approach his changing health condition. Because dealing with long COVID symptoms is no joke. And those people who have dealt with it, they know the brain fog sets in, the body is not not feeling the strength that it used to. So you have to adjust yourself. So we work through a lot of creative ways in which to regain that vitality, in which to regain that inspiration in order to continue going. And over time, he reconnected back with his passions. He started doing more of the community, but he also set better boundaries with other people. So he wasn't giving himself fully, but actually maintaining where his energy was so that he wasn't overgiving, overdoing, overstressing himself. And that allowed him to get back to that feeling of wholeness, feeling of strength again, to get back into his speed. And that took about a year of working through different ways of how to think differently, because he actually even quit smoking. That was
Oh,
the effect. Yeah, that was the effect of the whatever was happening with his health. So that was huge change on different levels, and he wasn't sure how to deal with that. So we used creativity to rely on in order to continue going forward into this unknown. The biggest thing that I work with people is sometimes it's transitions from some kind of a event, but usually it's dealing with some kind of unknown. If they are starting a new business, that is a huge unpredictability. If somebody is trying to shift through a big transition in life, that is a lot of unpredictability. So relying on small habits to build those new neural connections based on the learning and based on how we acquire new knowledge, relying on the inspiration behind creativity and the aspects that connect to their core self, the sense of who they are, and the sense that gives them the most fulfilling and satisfaction. Those aspects work wonders in order to shift people onto a better timeline in a way.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can see how that. I can definitely agree with that. Let's do this. So what inspired your mission to shift paradigms and offer new perspectives, both in personal and business realms?
Well, my inspiration came from my own kind of struggles of feeling stuck. After years of being within kind of logical and analytical ways of being, I felt that I was lacking my creative self. I shifted so much to the other side that the creativity was missing. So my inspiration was, how can I get, how can I reframe my own experience and shift paradigm for myself so that I can reconnect with my creative self and also not leave the analytical things behind. So full integration. And then I wanted to also offer that to others who could
Mhm.
benefit from shifting paradigms, because the idea that if you just look at something differently, then that whole thing shifts. If you shift your perception and perspective, if you look at something upside down, then the whole thing looks different. And that, as I said, it opens up possibilities. And who doesn't like possibilities? We're living in times when things seem to be increasing in complexity constantly. And there's a lot of unpredictability, a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen in the world in the next hour, day, month, year. We are in a state of unpredictability. So we have to rely on our ability to control what we can. And that is most of the time is our internal state, our reactions, and our perceptions. You can control how you perceive the world, how you react to it, and how you deal with it. And that's within your control fully. So if we focus on that, and if I allow and help people to do that, then we all collectively can shift onto into better ways of dealing with things, which creates more innovation and more collaboration between all of us. Therefore, we all coexist much better.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I always tell people, that's going through things or that's worried about a lot of things, I always tell them just control what you can control. You can't worry about the stuff that you can't control. You have to just you can control how you react to certain situations. You can control your next move, but you can't control what another person is doing or what a job is doing or what anybody else in the world is doing. So just focus on what you can control, and As long as you control what you can control and you do it the right way, then you'll get the best outcome possible.
Exactly.
Um, so let's do this one. Can you discuss the role of mindset and self belief when someone is trying to achieve their peak performance or either unlock their full potential?
Mindset is huge. So, as Carol Dweck in her book Mindset, she actually spoke about two types of mindsets, growth and fixed. That is the key. If you really look at it, it's very simplified way of looking at the mindset. Mindset is either you can grow and improve and evolve, or the fixed mindset where things are the way they are and you can't change anything. Which one is very limited, another one is full of expansion and possibility. So mindset plays a huge role. Mindset essentially is how is your mind set for dealing with unpredictability, to dealing with uncertainty. And self belief can directly relates to the feeling of self worth, self confidence, self value. There is a very short clip that I watched somewhere on social media where the teacher stands at the front of the class and he shows $100 bill to the class and says, "Who wants this bill?" And everybody, of course, raises their hand. And then he crumples it and still asks, "Who wants the $100 bill?" And people still raise their hands. And then he puts it in water and he steps on it and he makes it dirty and he makes it unappealing. And people still want those money. So that is how the sense of self and self value is within people. No matter what happens to us, no matter what kind of things or events we go through, our value does not change. So self belief directly relates to the person's ability to see that worth within them, no matter what happens to them in life. And for peak performance, that is essential because in order to perform at your best optimally, the the way that you are designed as a human, as an optimized kind of biological organism, is to know that there is a essence within you that cannot be changed no matter what external events happen. And so that is the mindset and that is the self-belief for anybody who wants to reach higher levels, who wants to improve, evolve, grow, etc. And that is also directly related to their creativity. Creativity and self worth and knowing yourself is all linked together.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree, and I like the video analogy that you used about the $100 bill. That's pretty interesting. I mean, it's still $100 bill, whether it's dirty or whether it's wet or whether it's, you can still turn that into where it can still be spent. I would say because if it's wet, you can let it dry off, and you can still spin it. You can. So I do like that analogy. Converting it into a person sense, whereas like, hey, you're still you still got to know your worth regardless of what's going on in your life at the moment.
People fall on their face all the time. They fail, they lose things, bad things happen to everybody all the time. That is essential thing of life, but it does not detract from the basic essence and the value and the internal worth of the person. As long as they're connected with that, as long as they're striving to continuously clean themselves off, continuously get up after falling and striving to better themselves, their worth will continue only increasing.
Right, right. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So do you have any maybe like some technical tips or techniques or exercises that people could use to kind of get more into their creative flow or maybe focus?
Absolutely. It's easiest way is connect with your favorite creative activity. Maybe it's woodworking, maybe it's painting, maybe it is stacking objects together, maybe it's Tetris, whatever it is. And usually it has roots in childhood. Whatever activity that you enjoyed the most in childhood, maybe it was Legos, maybe it was arranging some kind of patterns out of leaves. Remind yourself what that activity was and see if you can get in touch with it again. The next easiest thing is just to doodle. When you take a pencil or a pen or colored pencils, whatever, and you start just moving your hand and doodling and just seeing what comes through, that is the easiest way to shift into the creative right brain thinking, because all of a sudden the lines are not straight, they're fluid, there's color, there's texture, and your hand is in motion as well. So whenever you stop, that is something that I do, just start doodling, whatever it is, whatever shapes that you can. Anybody can make circles or wiggly lines or some kind of triangles or squares. You can do that anytime, and that shifts the stress level into more relaxation, because, as I said, it activates the right side of the brain. There's color involved, there's movement, the physical movement.
Hmm.
That is a really good activity. And the second version of it is walking meditation. If you can go into nature and start observing and walking and moving your body, that allows you to start moving things and shift out of that overthinking, which then automatically puts you into creative zone. So those are the easiest things people can do. And then the third thing is kind of having journaling, and either journaling in the morning to offload a lot of thoughts. If you wake up and you're overthinking, just put them on paper. That is straight from the Artist's Way by Julia Cameron exercise. You can also do it at the end of the day, or you can do it right before the sleep and ask yourself, send me information or answer through the dream. So those are the three ways in which people can reconnect with their creativity instantly in the easiest way possible. And it's available anytime, and it requires very little tools or effort or engagement.
Okay. Okay. Um, so can you discuss the importance of continuous learning and growth, both for yourself as a coach and for your clients?
Oh my goodness, continuous learning is so important. I can't even stress it enough. Who doesn't learn? I mean, at first, when I was young and I thought, oh, I'm just going to be, one day I'm going to be finished with school and I'm never going to have to go through that again. And then as I continued going and growing and learning, I realized I actually like learning. There are subjects that I want to learn more about. I always want to know more. And so that is aspect of curiosity. So continuous learning not only engages the brain and prevents Alzheimer's. It's been known that people who engage themselves in pursuits of higher levels of learning, they are able to perform much better cognitively for much longer period of time. And especially people who are engaged in creative ways like music, they are even off the chart in terms of being able to perform cognitively in the later years. But everybody else, as long as you are continuously striving to get better, one step at a time, gather new information, integrate it, always expanding the mind, that is very important right now, because world is changing so fast. We have
Yes.
to be able to continuously keep up with it by staying flexible, which means this is very interesting thing, because our perception of the world depends on our ideas and structures and maps that we have created based on our beliefs. So it's easy to understand why some people are resistant to new information, because that would directly challenge their system of belief, their structure and maps through which they see the world. And it could be extremely anxiety provoking, because if you shift the way that you see the world, how will you relate to it? It could be very anxiety provoking. But if you are consciously learning, if you're consciously moving towards something that is maybe unknown, maybe a little bit scared, maybe uncomfortable, if you are doing it, it's like exposure therapy. If you're looking at something that scares you voluntarily, that allows you to take control of it, instead of, nobody's forcing you, nobody can force us to do anything. But if we look at things voluntarily, that allows us to open and expand our mind and remain in control of our own perception of this reality that is constantly changing. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I had it muted
Uh,
because it was some noise going on in my background. Um, So, but yeah, I'm a big believer in continuous learning and growth because if you want to be a better human being, if you want to be better at something that you're doing in life, you have to continue to do your research and practice at it and all this thing. So if you want to be better, whether no matter what it is, whether it's a human, whether it's just being a better human, or whether it's being better at being a writer, or being better at being an artist or painter, or whatever the case may be, it definitely takes that continuous learning and researching and just doing it, and just keep practicing at it to grow and get better. So uh, let's see. So if you so how do you hope your work at Art Diversion will contribute to the broader conversation and understanding of creativity, peak performance, and personal growth?
Mark, my hope that what I create can inspire somebody to be better and do better. I've been producing podcasts myself. I have 30 episodes, and the intent behind that was to share stories of other people going through challenges, overcoming that, and finding solutions through creative ways. So that others who see any of my work or work with me or listen to the podcast can find it within themselves, that spark of imagination, that's something magical that they used to have access to as a kid but then lost as they gotten older. So my hope is that people can get reconnected with that spark within them that can then allow them to create something better, step into themselves fully, full authentic expression, therefore collaborate better and innovate. More innovation and more collaboration means more, essentially more peace in the world, less conflict. Because when we are creative, we are much more united. Art unites people like nothing else does. The games that we play together as people, the art projects that we engage with together, they are automatically unifying people. So the more art people engage in individually, the more art they can then collectively engage in. And that could lead to a much better tomorrow because of that.
Yep, yep. Okay, so can you share any exciting projects or initiatives that you may have in the works, whether it's related to your coaching, workshops, or other things that you offer?
The initiatives and projects, the biggest one has been the podcast over the last 2 years. That's been the thing that I have putting most of my attention into, as well as just developing myself and developing the brand as it is. Because having a small business, having a brand is like having a small child. You have to develop it, you have to nurture it. And so that's been the biggest initiative that I have been working with and on. And so what will happen with it in the future? Well, that will depends on where it goes. So far, I'm just focusing on the podcast. I'm focusing in seeing what else can I offer to the world through my tools, through my experience. And I've been creating more of a video content in order to share with the people as well. So those kind of the things that I have been focusing on in order to express my own creativity in the audio format, video format, as well as visual arts like painting, etc. So that is where my energy is going towards, and that is for the next foreseeable future. That is going to be where I will be found spending most of my time in.
Okay. So what's the name of your podcast?
The podcast is called Reluctant Hero, And the premise behind is that we are all heroes on our hero's journey. And oftentimes we find ourselves reluctant because of the complexity of the challenge at hand, because of how overwhelming it could seem. The hero's path is riddled with challenges, obstacles, um, and all kinds of adversaries. So
Mhm.
that's been the podcast that I have been focusing on, and that's I've been doing it on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube in order to, as I said, inspire others to find their own hero inside and continue on that journey.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I like that. I like that reluctant hero. That's an interesting title, concept behind it as well. Um, and I'll make sure that I put the link to that in the description or the show notes as well, so that way people that's tuning in can easily just access your podcast as well as your website as well. So um, let's see. So how do you approach balancing the analytical and scientific aspects of your coaching with more intuitive and creative elements?
That is a great question because, as I said, that was the whole idea behind my work to integrate both left side of the brain and right side of the brain, analytical and creative, kind of masculine and feminine. And so the way that I deal with it is that first I try to grasp the full concept of what I'm dealing with. What is the person's world that I am connecting with? Then, of course, I use a lot of intuitive pattern recognition because after learning all different types of tools and modalities, I have all of this information in my left brain, in my analytical, in my structures and frameworks. And so when I am in conversation with somebody, a lot of patterns show up. And so I look through them and I almost like three-dimensionally rearrange them and manipulate them in my head in order to provide the next best step for the client that I'm working with. So that interaction itself plus the information, that is in essence the combination and integration of analytical and creative, the logic, the structure, as well as fluidity. Because in any conversation, there is this element of flow state, being in the zone, especially when you are on one with a person. That is an element where almost kind of a something, a third entity arises when the two people come together. They enter into a space and something third comes between and out of that experience, and that something is of unseen invisible nature, but it carries within itself certain unpredictability as well as an element of magic and inspiration. So the spoken word is the structure, but the words and the meanings behind it is the creativity. And so the tools learned from the books and experiences, that is the logical and kind of solid, but how they apply to the situation, that is the fluidity of the approach. And so that is how I merge the two. And it's very personalized, therefore, for each person based on what is the thing at hand, what is the challenge we're trying to solve, and how to unlock the gates for creativity to flow freely instead of just piecing it through and sectioning it off into squares. We are living in a square world. We live in square boxes, look at square devices, our tables, our cars, everything is square. So
Yep.
how can we provide some fluidity, some flow of this life force through ourselves into ourselves so that we can reach new insights? That is the biggest, that's the motto of my brand, clarity of insight through the diversion of the mind. When you find some kind of creative way, it creates a diversion for the logical mind. So you're no longer thinking, you're just kind of doing. You're no longer stressing out about the details, you're looking at the big picture. And
Mhm.
so that shifting of the vision, that's what promotes this process for me. And that's how I integrate both.
Okay. Okay. So, are there any common misconceptions or myths about creativity or peak performance that you are aware of or that you aim to dispel through your work?
That is a great question. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that you can have shortcuts. Of course, the biohacking world is based kind of on shortcuts, but maybe I think that is a misconception because you can enhance things, but it still takes time and dedication and consistent effort. It's not instant. Peak performance is doing something for days, weeks, months, years in order to achieve it. It's not instant. So I think one of the biggest misconception is that you can achieve something overnight. There's no such thing as overnight anything. Peak performance depends on that dedication and persistence and building of the character and just discipline continuously over a long period of time. So I think one of the misconceptions people think, oh, if I just do this, it can short circuit and shortcut give me a exact direct line towards something. But
Mhm.
sometimes that can be detrimental. Sometimes shortcuts could be detrimental to the process because if you skip some important part, you will have to go back and do it again.
Yep.
So that is the biggest myth or misconception I believe there is, that in this time and age of instant gratification, peak performance can also be swept into that same category, and it can't.
Okay. Okay. It's pretty interesting. So, if someone, all right, so is any of your pieces of art for sale?
Not at the moment. I've done things for by request a long time ago on commission, but at the moment I haven't had any producing capacity. But I am available on commission as well. So if somebody wants to request their bike or their car painted, I could do that. But I have not built up the library that I could sell.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious. So, okay. So, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience about whether it's about your work, your vision, your approach to unlocking creativity or peak performance?
Well, that's a good question. If there's anything else that I would want to say is that alignment is very important for anybody. So if you are listening to podcasts and you're trying to grow yourself and improve yourself, alignment with your values is of the number one importance. Knowing who you are. So it's like know thyself. And that is kind of a interesting thing because as ourselves, we are represented by this ego, this personality, something that we have built over time based on our nature, nurture, environment, and our natural predispositions, our society, our background, our family influences, and our free will and the desires to be who we are. So understanding where we come from, how we built this identity that we have is the beginning. But what's next is knowing that this identity is temporary and eventually we all kind of expand into a much bigger version of ourselves. So, alignment with values means understanding where you're starting now, but what you are aspiring towards. What is your higher version of yourself is, and what is the roadway towards reaching that. And so that is the point of peak performance, that is the point of creativity, lining up, discarding anything that doesn't serve that attainment of that higher version of yourself, and then moving towards it systematically.
Hmm. Yeah, I like how you break that down. I mean, that should to me that should be everybody's goal is to I'm big on saying this. My big saying is positive thoughts bring positive outcomes. Negative thoughts bring negative outcomes. So the more positive thoughts you have and the more positive minded people you keep around you, the more positive things will happen. And then the same thing with negative minded. If you keep a lot of negativity around you, then that negativity will seep into your life, and then you'll see more negative things happening. So I definitely like how you the way you broke it down about that though.
Yeah, one step at a time, but also not neglecting the negative parts. That is one thing that sometimes we are prone to, distracting ourselves from negativity. Sometimes things are hard, and sometimes we experiencing extreme amounts of pain and negativity, and that should be acknowledged. We should not be focusing or dwelling on it, but acknowledging that this is something really difficult and negative in the moment, but it will change. It's not permanent. One step at a time, just moving towards keeping that aim straight, aligned with that higher version of yourself. And even if there is negativity that presents, acknowledging it, moving past it, and looking for the higher levels, higher versions, higher ideals.
Hmm. Yep, I definitely agree. So um, I definitely appreciate you taking the time out today to come on the show and talk with the audience about you know the about everything that you offer, about you know helping people get to their peak performance and reach their full potential, things like that. Because you know, with my show, I kind of focus, I focus on mental health, but then also like personal development, you know, stuff like that as well. So, I think people would definitely get a good feel from this. As far as a few, like you gave a few little tips on how they can improve um, their mindset and things like that. So I definitely feel like it'll help. And then of course, the people can they reach out to you maybe like on from your website or something.
Absolutely. Artdiversion.com. There are links to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the social media platforms. You can reach out to me and absolutely can have a conversation.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I'll put all that down in the description as well so they can get to it. But once again, I thank you for your time and your expertise as well. Everybody that's watching, you guys have just watched another episode of All in All with Alex, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.